And in that letter, Paul writes, and you'll remember these words in verse 18, if he, that is, if Onesimus has wronged you, Philemon, at all, or owes you anything, charge that to my account. Now that word charge is what the older English Bibles used to translate as impute. Impute that to my account. The word impute comes from the Greek word that we translate that from comes from the world of accounting. You know, if you're a business person and you have a company, no doubt you either do your own accounting or you have someone who does it for you. You have a ledger on your computer in which you keep an accurate record of every single individual who owes you something. You have it down to the detail and at what time that debt was incurred. And you're also aware of every single individual whom you owe something to. If you don't have an accurate record of that, you're going out of business real soon. You see, the same is true also, let's say you're a university student. And let's say you're taking a student loan. And in your student loan, you be assured of this. Somewhere in a back room at the university sits a little fella who's got glasses this thick and who has kept a record of every single course that you've ever taken that you haven't paid for. And he imputes that. He reckons that or charges that as a debit against your account. You know, if you work for a living and you get a paycheck at the end of a pay period, you know that you get that pay stub and then you have a record of all of the hours that you've worked and you make sure that the two are reconciled against each other. In other words, that there is an accurate imputing of what is owed to you. That's what's behind this word impute. Now, let me say this. The Bible speaks about 3 imputations. 3 times that something is reckoned, credited, charged, or imputed to our account. Here's the first of them. Number 1, we are reckoned sinners by nature in Adam. Let me read to you what the Bible teaches. Romans chapter 5, verse 12. Therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man. Now you say, okay, I know that. Adam sinned. That's how sin came into the world. Several verses later in verse 15. For if many died through the one man's trespass, one guy sinned, many died. Now verse 16. For the judgment following one trespass brought condemnation. The implication is for all. One guy sinned, everybody gets condemned. Look at verse 17. If because of one man's trespass, death reigned through that one man. Next verse 18. Therefore, as one trespass led to condemnation for all men, one guy sinned, everybody is condemned. And then the next verse 19 says, for as by one man's disobedience, the many were made sinners. One guy disobeys. The word made there is like the word ordained. They're ordained into the office of sinner. Now, let me help put this in terms that we should all keep in mind. When that sperm reached the egg in your mother's womb and you were conceived, at that very moment you became a human being. And at that very moment, before you had done anything good or anything bad, or were even capable of forming a thought, all of Adam's sin was imputed, charged, or reckoned to your account. Now, I told you that this is vehemently attacked because immediately this makes some people mad. They say, that's not fair. How do I get charged with what someone else did? Let me give you an illustration. Now, this illustration comes, and those of you who know me know that I'm an NFL football fan. Look, I'm a Canadian, but those people down at the South have ensnared me with that football game, and I'm a rabid fan of the NFL. Now, imagine you're on the team and you're in the Super Bowl. And here's the good news. Your team is ahead by 6 points. That's the good news. And the good news, there's only 30 seconds left to go. Here's the bad news. The other team has the ball, and they're marching down the field, and they're now on your 10-yard line. touchdown gives them 7 points. They win the game. Here's the good news, however. Good news, bad news. The good news is they've got the ball, but it's 4th down and 2 yards to go. If you can hold them right here on the 10-yard line, you win the game because the ball gets given over to you. So as the teams line up at the scrimmage line, the crowd is now standing. There's electricity in the air, and everyone's cheering, and there's a roar going out, and you're on the defense, and you're waiting for the center to snap the ball to the quarterback. And the minute he does that, you dash forward, and you manage to get through the defenders just like lightning, and you get your arms around the quarterback, and down he goes for a 7-yard loss. You've just won the game. Everyone is cheering, and your teammates are flooding onto the field, and they're giving you high fives, and all of a sudden you hear a groan that goes out through the crowd. And you look out onto the field and you see an orange flag lying there on the field. Penalty. Oh. And you find out one of your teammates was offside. Wasn't you, it was another teammate that was offside. That's a 5-yard penalty. They get a 1st down, they win the ball game. Now you say, that's not fair. I didn't jump offside. There are 10 men on my side of the ball. None of them jumped offside. Just that one guy. In fact, there are all of those people that are standing on the sideline on your side, all the offense and all the extras and everybody else and the coaches and everyone else. All of them get the penalty as well. And you say to the ref, it's not fair. You know that one guy that he jumped offside, you put him back 5 yards. The rest of us are fine. And the answer from the ref is, you all wear the same sweater. You are in solidarity with each other. One man sins, it is reckoned to the whole team, even to those who weren't even on the field at that time. And that's how you started in life. Wearing the team jersey of humanity with a penalty assessed against you from God, and that penalty is death. You see, sometimes Christians only think this way. My problem is I sin sometimes. Please understand that's a problem, but that's not your biggest problem by a long shot. Your biggest problem is not that you sin. That's a problem. Your biggest problem is that you are found in sin, born into sin. With Adam's sin imputed to your record, reckoned to you, charged as a debit to your account, which you must pay, and that is the payment of eternal death. Now, I know that after we are born into sin, we keep on piling on more and more sins, which only makes matters worse than they already are, but that's the whole issue. That's why David writes in Psalm 51, in sin did my mother conceive me. In other words, at the very point of conception, I was already found to be in sin. Now let's go back to our verse in chapter 5, verse 21. It says, for our sake, the Father made the Son to be sin who knew no sin. Now here's the second imputation in the Bible. Your outline says, number 2, our sin was reckoned to the sinless Christ. See, it is reckoned to him. I want you to look back at verse 19 of the same chapter. It says, that is, in Christ, God was reconciling the world to himself, not counting, that's our word, not imputing, not charging, not reckoning, not debiting, not counting their trespasses against them. In other words, somehow the Father found a way not to debit our account, not to impute the sin onto our account, but to impute it onto Christ. Listen to the words from Colossians 2:13 and 14. And you who were dead in your trespasses and the uncircumcision of your flesh, God made alive together with him, having forgiven us all our trespasses by canceling the record of debt that stood against us with its legal demands. This he set aside, nailing it to the cross. That's why Christ is called our sin substitute. He becomes sin for us, and therefore it's very important at this point in time that I tell you what the cross looks like from God's perspective. From the perspective of God, the cross perfectly communicates what God thinks of sin. The cross tells us, in fact, God declares, "This is my declaration of sin."